Hey guys, welcome to the video, and in this part of my current video series we are going to talk about single responsibility in a huge code base. If you've missed any of my previous videos, make sure you check them out, and if you don't want to miss any of my future videos, make sure you subscribe and turn the bell notifications on. So first things first, we have a judge system here, and I'm going to show you different kinds of services and controllers to make sure that the system follows or not follows the solid principle, the single responsibility principle. So first things first, what is single responsibility in a nutshell? Single responsibility principle states that any module, class, method, variable, and so on needs to have single responsibility and needs to have only one reason to change in the future. That's the definition. If we follow the single responsibility principle uh, in our code, every single piece of it should have a single reason to change in the future. Okay, so I've extracted a couple of classes which we're going to analyze in a minute. First, I'm going to tell you that in the data layer, pretty much everything is done kind of okay. It's okay in terms of single responsibility principle. Every single class has its purpose. For example, the contest. The contest has only things that are related to the context, for example, an event, again, for example, a participant in a contest, and so on. So in the data layer, I believe the solid principles in terms of single responsibility are quite okay. So I'm not going to analyze it. What we have additionally, because I forgot to mention it in my previous videos, in my previous video, is that besides the data, services, and web layer, this project has workers layer. The workers layer is the part of the system which actually executes the code and the submissions and which actually checks whether the user submission is valid in terms of the predefined test. Good. So in the services, we have data layer and business layer. Mainly, these are the two separated groups of our services. And in the data layer, I believe that the developers made a pretty decent job. For example, let's open a contest data service. The contest data service, let's open the interface first. It does it work with a single responsibility. It should return data related to the contest model. So here, get by ID with the contest problems, get by ID query, get all active contest, get all completable contest, inactive, upcoming, past, visible. I believe that this class, this interface, sorry, works with a single purpose, works with contests, and works with data related to context. So it's pretty much fine. Yeah, if we have to be super detailed here, we may split the interface into two different interfaces. One for queries, only for queries, and one for create, update, and delete operations. So we can split the responsibility between two services, but that's not quite necessary. So I'm going to say that this interface looks quite fine. Then the contest data service. The contest data service is essentially the class which implements the interface we just saw. And if we take a look at the methods, each method is super cohesive. It's doing one thing. It's just doing a query, a query, a query. So everything looks quite fine here. So most data services look like that. They just have queries and no logic in them. No non-data logic. So I'm not going to take a look at the data services. So let's look at the business services. The business services are, for example, this one. We have a contest business service. This is a service which makes some logic around the contests. Let's take a look first at the interface. Is the interface following the single responsibility principle? A method about whether the contest is valid by contestant IP, whether a user can compete, a method about transferring participants, a method about deleting. Looks fine. Looks okay. So the interface follows the single responsibility principle. Let's see the class. The class has a couple of dependencies injected. That's completely okay. The first method has a single query, which again looks fine. I believe everything is okay here. And we have this one. Can user compete by contest by user and is admin? So let's take a look at what's going on. In terms of single responsibility principle, a method should have one of the following. A method should do one task only, or a method should delegate to other methods some data. So let's take a look. I can see various logics here. First, get me the contest. Here is how the method is delegating data. This is completely fine. Then check whether the user is an admin or lecturer. Okay, this is also fine. This is just calling another method, delegating a method. Then we have some logic here. Find participants. If participant equals no, return something, then validate datetime now. Well, that's not a single responsibility anymore, because this if can be extracted to a separate method. This if should be extracted, just like these two methods here, because now this method can user compete and blah 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 has two responsibilities. First, getting the contest by delegating data. That's okay, delegating data, delegating more data, and then having some logic, then having more logic, and then having even more logic. So the best way is to have these three ifs separated and extracted to a method. And this way, this one will just delegate data to methods which serve only one task. Because currently we have delegation and we have some logic. So it's not completely single responsibility. It's fine enough, it's not that bad, but if we want to be perfect, we should extract that logic. Okay, let's go to the next. Transfer participants to practice. This essentially means that when the contest is over, people can practice in it and transfer all the people who competed against each other to participants who can practice. We can see that we have a to-do here, which means that in the to-do says extract different logic blocks. So we should expect that this method already violates everything in terms of single responsibility. So let's take a look at it. Transfer participants. First, get the contest and validate it. Okay, good. I believe this should be a separate method which validates the contest, because this way this method does contest getting, contest validation, two responsibilities for now. Then we have some query here on the participants. This is third responsibility. That's a validation. We have some logic on the participants, which is again something completely different from the query. Fourth validation. We have some query here, fifth responsibility, and some other logic that I'm not going to try to understand because it's a lot, but we can see that we have multiple responsibilities here. We have contest validation, we have some participant logic. It's fine to group these two in a single method, because this essentially means get some participants and change some data. That's a single responsibility, it's fine. So we don't need to extract a single method here and a single method here. It's okay to do both solutions, to extract two methods or to extract one. But in terms of uh, responsibilities, this is already doing too much. We have the contest validation, we have the participant logic, we have some other participant logic for transferring these participants. So essentially this method does a lot, and this is clearly violating the single responsibility principle. Good. So delete by ID, this just delegate some data. This is completely fine. Yeah, this is super. Okay, this was the first service. Before we continue with the next two services in this video, I would like to mention my mentorship program. The mentorship program is available on Patreon. There's a link down below in the description. It's on patreon.com/Ivailo and in this Patreon program I constantly update. Every month I add additional exclusive video lessons for everybody to improve their skills. The whole idea is that every single lesson is chosen so that people need to know it, need to know the topic for advancing their career. Every single lesson is chosen carefully, and I also give the community the option to vote between lessons, which is also super cool. If you want to get some access to everything I provide, that's some practical books. I believe I have 3 already posted. There's some code challenges, some live workshops, a private community in which you can ask me anything. Everything is on Patreon. Make sure you check it out, and you may decide to join all the other 52 people who already learn from me. For example, we have the Anatomy of ASP.NET Core Requests video, which I explain the request response lifecycle in the ASP.NET Core framework. I'm explaining how to work with Redis, what you need to know in terms of Redis databases. I have some posts about the live workshops. I have some code challenges. I have some trees and graphs workshops, and so on and so on. There are a lot of useful and very nice to have in your skills videos. So make sure you check it out. And while I'm in the browser, I'm going to show you how to download the source code I'm currently using. It's available at this URL bit.ly/your-source. So bit.ly your source. And this URL, there's a link down below in the description, so you may check it out if you want to download the source code. You will receive a repository with all the codes I've ever used in my YouTube channel, and the current system is in the huge Codebase folder. So here you will find the OpenJudge system, everything I'm showing here. Now let's get back to the next service, and that's the Participants Business Service. The Participants Business Service is a business service which is working with participants in the contest. Let's take a look at the interface. The interface is create new participant by contest by user. Okay, creates participant, I guess. Update participation and time. Okay, that's also fine. Update participation and time by something else. Quite a long name, but I guess it should be obvious what the method does. Okay, so everything is participant related here. So I believe the interface is fine. Let's take a look at the business service. The business service, the first method is create new participant by some data, I guess. By the contest user ID, whether the contest is official and whether the user is admin. So let's take a look. What it does here, it creates a participant object, then add some additional data to that participant object, and then delegate some data to another method which assigns random problems to a participant. And this is only doing random problems. This is super. This is a great way to use single responsibility. We have creating of the participants, and we have extracted a method in which a random generator is creating some values. This is great because you can put all this code right here, and this way we will have a violation of the single responsibility principle. The first responsibility of this method will be create a participant, and the second one is to create problems for that participant. And these are two responsibilities in a nutshell. So it's a good method. I like it. It's very nice. Okay, good. Let's check the update participation and time method. We have get some participant by ID, then some validation, then even more validation, then even more validation. So the first responsibility is validate the participant here. Okay. Then the second responsibility is calculate some date time shenanigans, I guess. Add some values, add some minutes, new and time. Yeah. So we have two responsibilities in this method. The first one is validate the participant, and that should be extracted to a separate method. And the second one is do some logic which is related to the participation end time, which is some date time calculation. So there are two responsibilities here, and we can extract them. That will be completely fine. Then we have the same issue here. We have some validation going on, and then we have some logic. This logic is a bit more difficult to understand just by looking at it without any debugging. I guess add some dates to some participants, but in terms of single responsibility, we again have validation, which is the one responsibility, and another some logic with the date times. And if we understand the system better, we may see that these two should be extracted separately from these statements here. I'm not sure about that, but there may be three responsibilities here. So in terms of following the solid principle, we should extract these methods. Okay, the next business service. I believe the single responsibility videos will be the longest because single responsibility is actually the most difficult one. And developers usually make mistakes around the single responsibility. So this is why I've chosen so much examples. But I believe with more examples you would learn more about the principle. So that's fine. Good. The next business service, not the last, is this one, participant scores. So this is a business service which calculates participant scores. Let's take a look at the interface, recalculate some scores, and normalize some points. Okay, some logic here. We can see our calculation is done super smooth. We have single responsibility because give me some data and delegate the data. This is single responsibility all the way. And normalize all points. There are some transactions here. Call one method, call second method, call complete. This is also single responsibility. This has a single query and this has a single query. This is a perfectly written class. Every single method delegates to separate methods which do single responsibility correctly. And this is completely fine. Good. And the last business service is problems business service. We can see that this class is it's not that huge. It's okay. Let's take a look first at the interface. Problems business service. This is business service which does some logic around the problems or the tasks in the system. Retest task, okay, delete task, delete by contest, and do some copy pasting, I guess. Okay, good. we can see that this class is injecting a lot of dependencies. This is not a problem in terms of single responsibility. We may have single responsibility in every method, but every method may use a lot of dependencies. It's just a complex class, so that's completely okay. That should not be a mark for violation of the single responsibility principle. So it's completely okay. It may have some problems. I'm not saying that having a lot of dependencies is a good idea, but sometimes you don't have a choice. So it may be completely fine. So let's see what's going on. Retest a task. Super small method. Everything is just get some data, pass some data, pass some data, pass even more data. This is perfect. This is single responsibility all the way. Good. Delete by ID. Get some problem by some with some queries. Okay. And pass around data. And this is also perfect. This looks fine. So we may extract this code here to a separate method. It's a tiny detail, but overall the method is looking good. It just delegates data to different methods. It looks completely fine. This is some query, copy to contest. Yeah, this is also fine. Get some validation and pass the data. We may extract that validation to a separate method. It will be even better, but looks fine, looks great. And copy problem to contest. It gets some problem, some values, get some data. Looks single responsibility to me. I don't want to get into too many details on the business logic. I'm just trying to show you the obvious problems, because the obvious problems are something that you're going to understand better, because it's a huge solution. You don't understand it very well. You don't understand the whole business logic and so on. So that's why I'm trying to show you the most obvious violations of the single responsibility principle. So here, this class is also fine. There are some tiny details, for example, extracting this query or extracting this validation here, but overall it's pretty good. It's not that bad as it was here in the previous examples, where we had quite a lot of queries, quite a lot of validation, quite a lot of logic. That's not single responsibility at all. Okay, good guys. In this video I'm showing only services, and in the next video I'm going to show you the controllers. And before we finish, I would like to mention my sponsors, which you may decide if you decide to search for a new job, or if you decide to search for your first programming job, these sponsors may be the perfect companies for you. So make sure you check them out. The first one is Endeavor. Endeavor is a very nice company which constantly is searching for passionate developers. It uses latest technologies, cloud platforms, and it's pretty much a good place to learn different kind of skills. Then we have 2K. 2K is a very mature company with a lot of with a great company culture. A great company culture. When I met the manager of uh, the manager of the local office here in my town, they were so all about the people. It's great. And if you're living in Bulgaria, you may consider Smart IT. Smart IT are a fintech company, and they're using also the latest tech. They're .NET core oriented. So if you're happening to be around here, around me, make sure you check them out too. Good guys, thank you very much for your watch time. If you like the video and if you think that these video series are great, make sure you like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions, write them down in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to share with your .NET friends. It will help my channel a lot. Okay, bye for now.